What is up, my ninjas? I'm Strydent, and today, oh my god, this is a momentous review. 10 years later, I'm finally getting a fucking Garo figure. This is the 10th anniversary MAKAI KADO. MAKAI KADO. That's the MAKAI KADO 10th anniversary Garo. That's a little in-joke. One of the worst reviews I think I ever saw was on the original MAKAI KADO Garo figure, and my god, you guys might be able to find it. It's still on YouTube. I only came across it because there were so few reviews on this figure and all the figures in this line. It's kind of weird. As popular as Garo has become, you know, it's strange that there's not more representation of the character on YouTube when it comes to figure form. There's a lot of figures, you know, because there's a lot of knights and a lot of they've done a lot of figures. But anyway, you know, as a big fan of Garo, it's been hurting not being able to get one because these guys are so stupid expensive. I mean, they go anywhere starting at $60 to like $200, and it's like, dude, really? And I'm gonna go into those details, but this is such an ornate figure. The line, all the figures are so ornate that you almost kind of see that the artists put so much into it. But like I said, I've been waiting 10 years to do this review, to get this figure. I'm a huge fan. I've seen everything that they've done just about. And in that 10 years, they just keep on going and going and going and going. And they've just continued to grow. So I'm really happy to finally be doing a review of a Garo figure. I've been waiting a very long time to have one. And it's one of my favorite characters. If you remember, a couple years back, I did my the greatest Tokusatsu show ever video. And I was talking about Garo. So it's amazing to finally have him in action figure form. Because if you ever look around my man cave, which I will be doing a video of that soon, you will see a representation of all the shit that I love and all the stuff that helps keep me motivated with my own artwork. And Kira Amemiya's various movies, designs, etc. is a constant source of inspiration for me because he's one of my favorites in the directing game, and, you know, favorite artists, you know, he's up there. So anyway, sit back and relax and listen to me explain to you what makes MAKAI KADO Garo super awesome. Now, the first thing you notice when looking at a figure of this level of detail is that it is on another level. I mean, it's almost like if McFarlane and SH Figuarts or, you know, Figma or someone got together and made an action figure, because the levels of detail on this figure are insane. You don't see it on domestic figures with this level of posability. And, you know, to a degree, I see why they're so sought after, but then there are aspects of it, and I will get to that later on, that, you know, it reminds you that it's just a toy and people are going overboard. But I mean, this thing is beautiful. And it's so accurate. It's just insane, you know? And it makes you realize how badly we need this with American figures. You know, NECA can't do all of it by themselves. And NECA does give us this level of detail on every figure that we get, especially if the figure or the character or the design actually has this much detail on it. Everything on this thing is masterfully sculpted, it's masterfully painted, I have no slop, every little detail is well done. Things are working with each other instead of clashing, because sometimes you have, and this is a problem with McFarlane figures, is a lot of times you'll have details and design elements that get in the way of articulation. So, you know, that's fun factor being all fucked up for you because they didn't think through the engineering of the figure. You don't have that problem here. Everything, for the most part, there's one area where that is not the case. But, excuse me, everything else is the case. You can pose him, you can play with him a little. He's not fragile. That's what I like. I mean, he feels light, but I mean, that's something you get used to if you collect import figures. But he does not feel like if you move his arm this way, it's going to fall off. There's a lot of ball joints, ball socket joints, I guess, and they're well done, very sturdy, thick ball socket joints, with the exception of the ones in the hands. They're kind of small. But I mean, just you turn the figure around and look at it, you know, spin it around and look at all the different angles, and you're seeing detail after detail after detail after detail, just ornate as fuck. And it's just, it's beautiful. It's beautiful. It's something that it helps elevate these kinds of figures from just, you know, something that some, you know, weird guys that like tokusatsu, anime, or comics or whatever, stuff that we like, to a piece of art. I mean, this is art. And it's art that you can interact with, and it's art that allows you to recreate the other stuff that you saw this character do on screen. I love it. What I love also is this is Seijima Kouga. It's not Dogai Ryuga, and it's not Raizo either, and it's not Taiga. This is Koga, the main character of the first 2 seasons of Garo. Garo and Garo Makai Senki. And he was also in a movie. Two of the movies, Red Requiem and the Tears of the Blue Dragon. Anyway, he's my favorite of the bunch. Ryuga is my second favorite. But I just love how there are subtleties in the design elements of each of the different versions of Garo. And it's cool to see this original version 10 years later still looking just as awesome as he did the first time that I ever watched the show. And, you know, I was fanatically watching the show when it first came out. And trust me when I tell you that this is screen accurate. There's going to be some dork out there that's going to try to get in the comments and say, well, this is like this. And it's screen accurate. Trust me. The only thing they didn't do that they could have done is they didn't put a gloss finish on the gold, which I don't mind because it makes it look more like actual armor that's been used over a long period of time, but it's still well kept. Not like cheap dollar store vac metal like some of the newer stuff has, you know? I think that's an element that the Figuarts version kind of has. It's got more of a vac metal finish to it, which to me always cheapens the effect. You got to have shine, but you got to have a finish that works with it. So if you shine the right kind of light, there is reflection. But if you're not shining light directly on it, it still looks like gold, but it's not beating you up. You know, it's not super bright. It's not shimmering. That makes me happy. I like that look. That looks like gold that I've seen in real life. You know, that's not jewelry. You know what I'm saying? Like gold tools, gold embroidered frames, things like that. You know, golden armor, of course. You know, I've seen a couple displays, a couple shows, you know, museum shows with armor from different periods, and some of them had gold plating on it. And since it's older armor, it kind of has that kind of dulled finish to it. You know, it's not super bright reflective stuff. But I mean, this figure is just beautiful. I mean, I had so much fun posing him. You know, it's a good figure if you have fun posing the figure. You know, like if you have fun just doing basic shit with the figure, you know you've got a winner on your hands. And this was no exception to that. Like I told you when I made the switch, all the figures I'm reviewing, with the exception of a few here and there, are going to be ones that I'm going to show you and talk about how much I enjoy having these figures. You know what I mean? Things that I love and that I think you will love if you decide to take the plunge. So this guy's a prime example. All the details everywhere on this guy are immaculate. I mean, you're seeing the sword right now, and that's just the sword. It's just detail all over the place. There's so many different paint variations, and everything is so expertly applied that the figure just looks like it cost hundreds of dollars, and it didn't, even though a lot of them go for hundreds of dollars on the secondary market, which is kind of annoying because, I mean, at the end of the day, it is a toy, you know? But every little detail. Zaruba is there on his fist, which is pretty cool. He's kind of like his companion, almost like a, they call them Mado tools. They're mystical tools that help the Makai Knights detect and ward off some of the effects of, you know, spells and powers that the horrors may have. Horrors are demons in this universe. So yeah, he's kind of his guide, his spirit guide, so to speak. But yeah, man, this figure, it exudes what, we need in our figures, especially when it's something coming from the screen, be it film, be it the small screen, be it video games, whatever. When it's a translation of an existing character from, some kind of almost live action media, you need to have this level of detail, and they knock this shit out of the park. I mean, you're seeing everything as awesome as it looks in the show. I mean, shit, seeing this, I hope a bunch of you go and watch the show. Shit, I hope all of you go and watch the show. There's so many versions to choose from, but I mean, just look at how majestic this character looks. And trust me, when he fights, it's even better. Because you're seeing all that shit in motion, which means some serious engineering went into how this guy worked. And I love it. I was going to do articulation here, but I figured let me show you more of what he comes with so you can see what makes this a pretty, complete package. Garo doesn't use very many weapons. The only thing that he's missing from this package is his lighter. And the lighter is pretty cool because it's a mystical flame that reveals, if you're a possessed human being and he shines that flame in your face, the reflection in your eyes would let you know if there was a demon or not. But he's got his trusty sword, which is his soul metal blade, which is awesome. It's a mystical metal that only the pure of heart can actually carry and pick up. If you're possessed, you can't pick it up. He has his sheath and a hand specifically designed to hold the sheath, just like with Saber 2.0. I love it because that hand holds on for dear life. And I mean, and it's not even like this insanely tight grip. It's just a really perfect grip. I mean, that's the only way I can describe it. It holds on with just pure friction, and you don't have to worry about it. So posing him with it is a joy because it's so simple. The sheath itself, it's pretty, real simple, very straight up. I want to say they're not harsh lines, but they're very powerful lines, And I mean, he exudes power, so it makes sense. The sword itself is a thing of beauty. The soul metal blade has the nice, black center, and then all the little grooves are painted in there they're not sculpted, which I thought they would be. Actually, no, I take that back. They are sculpted. Then there's the whole wolf head right there towards the hilt. It's just so much well done design work. So much well done design work. And you see how they did their wash. They did a wash, they got into the crevices, and then they wiped off all the surfaces that are above the crevices. So it's not like American customizer washes that you see so much. Yeah, at first I was going to say that all these little design pieces were just painted on, but they're etched in there, which is freaking awesome. Sculpted detail all the way through. They didn't skimp on anything. The sheath, I wanted to look at the sheath one more time. The center I thought was like empty, so you could see the sword when it goes in there, but in the show you don't see that. So I'm kind of glad that they went all the way and kept it screen accurate. Now he has a cape, and the way that damn, look at all the detail on his back. It's crazy. But the way that you get the cape on there is that central triangular piece. You need to remove that piece, and it's actually really easy to remove. You just kind of pull on it or get your finger or your fingernail behind it, and it will come out. I mean, it's in there pretty deep because there's a very long peg that sits in there, so you don't have to worry about it falling out while you're posing him or if you decide to play with him or something. But once you get that out, you reveal that peg hole, and that peg hole fits the cape, and the cape just sits directly in there, and it's pretty bulky, and you've got a big hinge. So for poses like this where he's running and you want the cape splayed open and he's doing stuff, you can actually pull that off. The cape itself is a thing of beauty too, and I hate plastic capes, but somehow for this guy, they didn't really do a bad job. it works. It works better than the SH Figuarts capes for anything that I've seen SH Figuarts, except maybe Kamen Rider Femme or Siren. But this cape is pretty nice in the sense that there's a lot of hinges, so you cover up all the gaps. In the show, it is segmented, so it works really well. It just flares out almost like a moth's wings, and I really enjoy that because it's not something you see all the time. And for this style of character, you've got this majestic, very Asian / European armor. Because I say Asian because there are like Tengu elements and like old Shinto sculptural elements in this design. But then the way the armor is comprised, the pieces that the armor is comprised of, it fits just like some traditional, European armor. It looks really good. And then you have this cape that doesn't look like anything I've ever seen on a European knight. I mean, there's things about it that it's big, it's very heavy, it looks like it's a heavy material, but the design work, the shape of the cape, where it hooks in and all that stuff, it's just, it's something else. And I love all these different things that they pulled from to create this design. And, that's another thing that makes this work. Now, if you don't like plastic capes, and you're against it completely, I mean, I kind of am. It worked for me. My gripe here is the way it connects. It doesn't connect 100% flush. So from sideways, it's going to look kind of funky. But then again, he is wearing a ton of armor, so it shouldn't look that bad, but I don't like that. Detail-wise, there's lots of sculpted detail in the cape itself. The cape is flexible. It's way more flexible than the SH Figuarts capes. It's almost transparent as you get towards the ends. As you can see, it goes from black to kind of like a almost clear, like a smoky grayish color. So light goes right through it, and then you can see the sculpted details at the very ends. And all these things, I'm telling you, all these effects, all these little things. I mean, I think in the show, there's dirt down there, or maybe it's worn. I can't remember because you don't see him with the cape that often. But man, come on. This is like S-class shit right here, Super S-class shit. I just can't stress enough how well, how well they did this. It's just everything works perfectly. The design and the accessories, it all looks good. Now, I'm not gonna say that there are no flaws, but for people like me, there will be flaws. For the rest of you, I doubt you'll see flaws because, I mean, this is so far beyond what we're used to here in the US. You can't complain, It's like McFarlane figures if they gave a shit and actually said every figure will have a ton of articulation. Okay, his articulation. Start from the head, move all the way down. Head can move in all kinds of directions perfectly. It's on a ball joint. It's a double set. Ball down there, ball up here. Left to right, up and down. Jaw is articulated. The shoulder pads are also articulated. Pretty awesome. Arm moves up about that much. Twist at the bicep. Double jointed elbow gets you more than 90 degrees. And there's also a swivel in the glove. Swivel at the wrist. And then there is a ball joint so you can move it all over the place. But then there's also a hinge. So you can move it up and down, whatever orientation you get it at. Now, the waist, it's 2 barbells. You have let me get my pointer so you can see. You've got one up in here and then one down here in the waist. So you get a lot of lean. See that? You get a lot of back. See that?
And you get a lot of forward as well, especially if you line it up properly. See that? So he gets the whole everything. Be sure to watch it so that you can line it back up properly when you want him to stand up straight. Legs come all the way up here. It's pretty nice. You don't get much on the side, but you can kind of fake it because you have a number one, the crotch piece is a floating crotch piece. You see that? So you can turn the thigh right here, right in there. You can turn it, and that's how you can get more back. You turn it, you get even more forward. See that? Then you get double jointed knee, which is very nice and is very well hidden. Then you have, what else? You've got swivels here. There's lots of swivels because there's lots of ball joints, but you can see this, right? And then you have the ankle joint, which is a little bit hindered at times by these little anklets, but the anklets are floating pieces, so you don't have to worry about them. They kind of twist and get out of the way when you know, as you move them. So ball jointed foot, ball joint at the top, ball joint at the bottom. So you can get it up this much, get it up this much, back this much, toe point that much. And then if you have him in a dynamic pose, he will automatically do the, you know, he'll utilize the split, or the, pivot. So overall, he's very posable, and I love it. Gives you a very thorough looking suit of armor, you know, not to mention the fact that he's already got this, you know, wolf motif, and you know me and the wolves, man. That's my motif. It's my spirit animal.
So that is articulation for Garo. But I want to get into some other things. I mean, like I said, he looks amazing. It's very easy to pose, lots of stuff going on, articulation wise, to allow you to get the maximum out of the figure. But like I said earlier, he is not without issues. And the issues are stuff that I guess longtime collectors, people that actually play with their figures and pose them and take pictures, we would figure this stuff out, but the average probably won't. So anyway, I'm gonna get to my problems and my nitpicks, because I do have a good few. We're gonna start with pieces that you could glue, but they're kind of meant to be articulated, and there are little tassels on the back of his shoulder pads. These little tassel things, they tell you, you know, turn them, move them, watch out, they're fragile. They're even in the instruction manual. And it's like they just didn't want to make the pegs long or give them the little lip on the very end. Like, there's hardly any lip on there. If there was just a little bit more of a lip, it would actually catch, and then it wouldn't pop out so much. These things, pretty much, you put them in, you go to pose the shoulder somehow, and then you, without even noticing, the thing's on the floor. Next up, it's his range of motion in his hips. It's like that, this is the max, unless you twist the thigh in a weird way and then move it. And it sucks because all they needed to do was shrink the thigh itself, like the armor at the top of the thigh. All they pretty much had to do is kind of shave that down just a little bit, you know what I mean? Or even change the direction of that point, or make the whole thing shorter and just have the point flush with his actual thigh. You have a floating crotch piece, it'd be perfect, but they didn't do that. Next up are the pegs for the hands. They're on a hinge, just like you get with Figuarts, and they're little peg pieces with a decent lip. But as soon as you start moving them around, you'll notice that the hand itself kind of comes off of the lip. It's like there's the hole, the peg hole itself is too big. So you easily get the hand kind of coming off when you're posing him, to the point where you end up with this. And I hate this. I don't want to see gapping. You know what I mean? I want it to stay where I put it. So that bothers me. And then the pegs themselves are just way too small. I don't like this. I don't like when you end up with this at all. I mean, look at the recess or the peg hole itself. You can just see it. It's not a lot of room. They didn't sculpt a lip or somehow get the lip to be on the inside or the ledge so that the lip can catch on there so that it won't come past a certain point unless you apply any pressure or force or whatever. Just that's the worst, most poorly conceived part of the figure. The pegs themselves, they're just small. They look like they would be better suited for smaller SH figure arts, not this 7-inch figure. You know what I'm saying? And he's got weight to him, so it's kind of like they almost created this thing to fail. You know what I mean? So you definitely don't want to play with this thing very rough. You want to be really, really careful. So the bottom line, this is a top-of-the-line figure. He's not without his flaws, but he is so close to perfection that some of these flaws, all the flaws just seem so minuscule, You do the floor polish thing or the clear nail polish thing on the joints, you can thicken them up to fill in those holes. If you, like I said, play around with the thigh, you can actually get him to stand wider apart, get his legs farther apart, get him to kick. I mean, Garo doesn't really do a whole lot of that stuff. Every now and then he'll do some fancy, super agile move, and then you'll kind of need that for your poses. But overall, he's a powerhouse swordsman. So he's got very cool, powerful skill in how he uses the sword, like power-based skill, I guess is what I'm trying to say, strength-based. But when he's not using the armor, which we don't have here, that's when he's doing all the fancier stuff. So, a lot of what he can't do plays to the strengths of the character when in this mode. So, if you're a fan of the show, this is a no-brainer. This was $40. It's a reissue, so they retooled things that were problems on the previous releases. And believe it or not, the previous releases had even less articulation than what we have here. So, at least Bandai is trying to get it right with each version of the figure. I'm not going to go into how many versions of Garo there actually are, because there's a lot, especially in MAKAI KADO. There's one for each version of Garo from the very many seasons. And this was the first one, and they retooled it and made it perfect for those of us who only want this guy. But as you can see, the guy is full of detail. It's a quality built figure. He doesn't feel fragile. I mean, he's light in comparison to like your standard like McFarlane figures or even some of the older Marvel Legends, but he still feels substantial. Posability is on point. The accessories, it's not a huge accessory count, but they're the accessories that are needed, and they help make him a badass figure. I mean, there's no reason to not like this. So all in all, if you see him, get him. He's so worth it. I would definitely put him up there as one of my favorite figures. Probably one of the best I've bought all year, when the year just recently, just started. So pick him up. As you can see, there's a theme with me. I love knights. It's been a thing since I was a kid. And he fits in perfectly with them. I mean, he looks like he's the fabled knight that they all have patterned themselves after, But beautiful figure, totally worth the $40. Seek him out if you can before he goes up to the insane high price status. So anyway, I'm Strydent. This has been my review of the MAKAI KADO 10th anniversary Garo figure, the Kouga version. He is an S-class figure, even with his shortcomings. So anyway, that's it for me. You guys have been great. Peace outside.